Srikanth, it's always a pleasure to chat with you. Uh, Today we'll chat about Chat GPT and other things as well. First of all, welcome to Economic Times podcast, The Morning Brief.
Thank you, Arijit. Great to be here.
I just wanted to start on a personal note and ask you if I have to, play with words, and some parts of AI actually has mastered that. Uh, Which draws you the most? Is it maths? Is it the mind? Or is it men? By men, I mean humans.
Oh, that's a great question. I think it's the mind that probably has me most attracted in the
Not
sense that,
maths.
which is how do human beings really work? Math is still easier to understand and figure out. Human brain is such a beautiful and so complex a creature. Understanding it, it'll take us many, many more years to understand that. So that fascinates me more, even though I'm more of a math guy, but I think I'm more curious about the mind.
But how did you? I mean, this is a very unique combination, the so called left brain, right brain. And most people say that the two twins don't meet. In your case, it's a perfect fusion.
Yeah, I was actually greatly interested in math when I was growing up, and I went to engineering school. I thought if you knew math, you should do engineering,
Yeah.
which was obviously a wrong decision, but I did engineering. And during engineering, I had the option to take some courses in humanities. And one of those courses was this course called Psychological Basis for Human Behavior. And I had this really fat book, 700, 800 page book written by a guy called Morgan King. I opened that book and I felt like, oh, this is amazing. This is what I should be studying, because it was like about psychology, the evolution of psychology and various methods of psychology. And I was way more fascinated with that than math itself. That's when I realized that, okay, I have to do something that.
It wasn't that dense. I mean, 700-page book and all. The very look of it would be very intimidating.
Exactly, it was in fantastic print. I couldn't even afford to buy that book. I had bought it from the library, but it was great print, and it had all these experiments and Pavlovian experiments, and behavioralism, Skinner, etc. And everything I was learning from that was completely new to me. I had not been exposed to that side of the world,
Correct.
but it just fascinated me. And since then, I have been a student of psychology as well.
Okay. Now, we're talking about the rational side, or perhaps even the irrational side of how the human mind behaves. And that's your playground, so to speak. In a recent LinkedIn post, you had said, and I'm going to quote you, that there isn't a lot you can do about your luck, but one can certainly work hard and make sound decisions to improve the odds of success. If we rewind 25 or 20, 24, 23 years, early years of Fractal, two of your five co founders suddenly left, taking away almost a third of Fractal with them. At that point, did you not curse your luck?
One of these things, it's very natural. Why me? This question comes up every time something happens to you. You feel like, why me? And the counter question that came in my head right after that was, why not me? It if you think about luck, you are equal. Everyone is equally likely to face some events, lucky and unlucky events in their life, and you take the good luck for granted, and you take the bad luck and say, why me? And even though I had, for example, once I had been detected with something really nasty, like a tumor, and the first thing was like, oh my God, why me? And the instant answer back was, why not you? So many people have diseases and cancer and various kinds of health conditions. You could have been one of them, equally likely to be one of them. So the question to why me is, why not me?
Well, that's really cool, calm, and composed. I don't know how I would have reacted. I would have certainly flipped. But the time, and that's what amazes me all the time, is you were setting up business just when the dot-com boom went bust. And, uh, you know, early company, the timing seemed off, and suddenly you know, half the team or moves away, or a third of the team moves away along with your old campus buddies. That's hard luck twice over.
We, entrepreneurship is a battle of survival. There's a lot that comes at you. Entrepreneurship is meant for failure. By design, companies are designed to fail. Only when you can beat those odds, you are successful. And so it's a 98% failure game, right? 2% odds game. So you have to start with the assumption that something or the other will come and keep hitting at you, and you have to somehow escape that. You can't keep complaining that these things are coming at you. You don't know what it will be, but there will be some existential events that will hit every entrepreneurial journey, and you just have to toughen up and think of this battle as a battle for survival, because if you survive long enough and you keep learning, you'll eventually be successful.
But the middle class dilemma, is always, where is the capital? And this, that go against the odds, fight against the odds. When you are always battling for funds, these things become far more stark, more in your face, far more existential, isn't it?
Yes. I think I also started with a similar mindset when I grew up, that entrepreneurship is hard, but entrepreneurship is also corrupt. That's how my parents told me, my father told me, honest businessman is an oxymoron. And then it was difficult to raise capital. What I would give myself some credit for is I revisited these assumptions as I experienced the world. I saw Narayan Murthy in a business ethics class, and I realized that, okay, maybe businessmen don't have to be corrupt. And then I saw friends of mine raising money, and I realized that, okay, capital can also be raised. So the question is, can you go back and revisit your assumptions in face of new data? And that's really what happened. And then I felt like, look, I have nothing much to lose. I've got a job which pays me very little. I have good education. I should take a shot at entrepreneurship. And if you fail, you know what the worst case is, you will go back and find something else. So you have very little to lose and a lot to gain. And once you get in, you're struggling and you're failing a few times, you realize that, okay, look, this is a battle. I have to toughen up. I have to somehow conquer this challenge. So if you take this struggle, as a challenge and something that you have to get better at, I think it gives you energy to continue the fight.
It must have been a body blow when such events happen. And let me ask you this, that between the split that happened, and a venture capitalist telling you, Srikanth, we love your company, but not your leadership. You don't be the CEO. That can be debilitating on your morale, on your feeling of self-worth. How did you cope with that?
Yeah, it was hard. So firstly, other founders left, and they told me, we don't like your leadership. And then somebody else, a classmate, actually a senior of mine from college, comes and tells me that, hey, we like your company, but we don't like you, and I don't think you can scale the business. And that was tough. The only thing for me was, I was feeling like maybe I could get better. First, if I process this feedback, I brought in my exec team, I told them this happened, and I wanted to make sure that they know that it's not a problem with the business. They don't like me, but the business is sound, because I need to make sure that everyone continues to believe in Fractal, even if they don't believe in me. And then on the sidelines, you're thinking, okay, this is feedback, it's real feedback. I need to get better. I need to process this feedback. And I know I'm capable of it, and keep working at it. It's not easy. I had very difficult days. When founders left, there were days when I just could not sleep. I was to really literally cry at the whole situation. But I think over time you process it, and you have this sense of self-worth that yes, you are good enough, and you just have to keep working at it.
And who was your emotional sponge? Your wife, your parents, some other friend? Maybe you had a coach?
I would say many. My wife, absolutely the most important one, because she was able to not just provide me support. I've seen this in every crisis, that she just rises up, and she just a pillar of strength. And then she was able to also help me with all of the legal stuff that was going on. She was a lawyer by training, so she was working overtime to protect Fractal and me in as much as possible. So that was very helpful. And then there were friends, a lot of friends. You really test your friendships when you're in really big, troubling times. There were so many classmates and friends who came in and helped me out. It was incredible, like hundreds of them who helped us out. So yes, I'm very blessed in that sense that there was a lot of support from family and friends.
But this would have been, I'm sure, that much more tougher because this were friends who started out with a common goal who are splitting, and that too so early on. So that's like a double, a double whammy, isn't it?
It is. It is. It is. It is very difficult, and there is advice that you should never start a business with your friends, and probably this is the reason because your friendships are gone and your business is also gone at the same time. I've never believed in that wisdom. I always felt that you should start with people you already know because you need trusted relationships to build a business for the long term. It's like a lot like marriage. Might as well do that with someone you have built trust with and are friends with, who can hang out with, rather than strangers. But when such a crisis happens, it does unsettle you quite a bit.
Have you lost touch or you've reconnected? Because time's a healer.
I am still connected to all of them, and we had our 25th year reunion for our business school, and I met up with a bunch of them. One of the co-founders, I frequently speak with him. He's in Singapore. One is in Hyderabad, and he I met during our 25th year reunion. And one lives in the Bay Area. I haven't met him in a long time. So I think the relationships are still there. I wouldn't say I will have dinner with them or hang out with them a lot, but yes, I don't mind getting a cup of coffee with any of them.
Right. But if I may ask, what was the disagreement all about? Was it about leadership or the vision of the company? What happened?
I think it was my ego, to be very blunt about it. There was an election. They all elected me as a CEO unanimously. And after that, 6 months later, they decided that I was absolutely bad news.
Because the VC investor said that we want a different CEO. Was that the reason?
The investors wanted a CEO, some CEO. 5 of us were supposed to elect a CEO. So we all went to London. We spent a week in London, had this election. Pranay, who's still we are co-founders of the company, still run the company. Strangely enough, we two were the candidates.
Oh.
The other 3 were the judges. They were supposed to rate who's better of the 2 and who should be the CEO. After listening to us, and then after they went into this conference room and spent the whole day there. Like smoke was coming out of the chimneys by the time they came out.
It's almost the selection of the Pope.
Exactly. And they said, we have unanimously selected you, Srikanth, as the CEO. So we were all excited. We went to watch Chicago, the musical.
Wow.
It was all great. And then 6 months later, between that, we had several small crises. And they were like, okay, we don't want you. Let's go back to our previous way of working. And that's really what happened. And I think if I look back, they placed trust in me. I could have been a better leader. So I didn't rise up to be the leader that they wanted. And to some extent, I'm sure there was blame on their side too. But I will take my side of it and say, okay, how could I get better? So this is one of the things, again, to learn is, shit happens, bad things happen. Can you take your part of it and process yourself instead of blaming everybody else? Yes, blaming everybody else is
the easy part.
Feels good, but it's not helpful. Processing it on your side is the only thing that really matters.
But this entrepreneurial itch, how did it come about? Because you were working in banks, very cushy job, first with ABN AMRO. It was like the ultimate, it was the icon of European establishment. ICICI, very comfortable, solid brand. Why suddenly decide, let's leave all this, and the mental peace that on the 31st salary aayega account mein?
It was a search for meaning. Banking for me wasn't providing enough joy and meaning. While it was still fun and there was some interesting math to do, etc., I couldn't see why I was doing it. How is it making the world a better place? I couldn't answer that question for myself. And entrepreneurship seemed like it would be more meaningful. And it's also an exciting time around the .com time. It was a lot of entrepreneurs were getting created. So we're also sucked in by the whole zeitgeist of the .com as well.
But I thought, that ICICI is known to incubate young leaders. It's one of the pioneers in data sciences, and I have friends who worked in those departments, and they have now become CEOs of different other
Jairam
organizations. Like,
Jairam,
yes,
yeah.
Jairam, yes.
Jairam is a very good friend and a classmate.
Huh.
Yes.
Who's in Singapore?
That is Mohan Jairam.
That is Mohan Jairam.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jairam Sridharan I'm talking about.
Okay,
Who precedes him?
Okay.
Who's right now runs Piramal Housing Finance
Right,
company as well.
right.
So yes, ICSA was a very entrepreneurial culture, incredible culture, because you were like literally 1 year out of campus.
Yeah.
You at ICSA they would let you go and do deals all by yourself. So I felt really energized and charged up about being able to go get things done and take literally big risks on part of ICSA. So it was a culture that really created this belief in me that I could go conquer the world, I could do something. So I would definitely give credit to ICSA for having created this entrepreneurial streak in me.
This was during Vagul days or KVK?
KVK
was.
KVK would run these big town hall meetings.
Right.
I was part of some of his town hall meetings, and where he would literally go after somebody for getting the font size wrong.
Wow.
Instead of, it had to be 11 font size. If it was 10, he would be able to catch it and throw that presentation out of he won't see it anymore.
But those days, the internal, the data science department and all weren't there.
Weren't there. There were some very sophisticated people in terms of how they could use math. The analytics setup that ICSA set up was in around 2000 when Jairam took over as a head of the business intelligence unit.
Right.
And in fact, we worked with Jairam to build the first scorecard for statistical scorecard for ICSA in 2001.
Right.
It was quite fascinating to predict consumer defaults using banking and using application information of the consumer.
That's I read this, and that I want you to explain how it actually works. That I was told that ICICI used to rely on a American data sciences company for their credit models, but they were not suitable or designed with based on the Indian realities. You thought you could solve this. You and your friends wrote a 32-page white paper. What does this actually mean, credit models? I mean, how can you predict?
That's a great question. The idea was that you are lending, and you're making some decisions during lending time as to who will return your money and who will not. This is usually in the realm of human decision making. Humans are judging, and sometimes if I wear a suit, I have a higher chance of getting selected. So people are making some impressions about the credit worthiness of people based on their looks, their educational qualifications, based on how they're dressing up and all of that stuff. The problem with this is that not that there's no signal in this data, but it's inconsistent. One day I had a fight with my spouse, and that day I'm very strict. Or one day I didn't have lunch on time, therefore I'm feeling, particularly less generous to people. So these things can happen. Human beings are famously very inconsistent. Yeah. What a scorecard does is to take all the patterns in historic lending. You've been lending for a number of years. Some people were good. They paid their money on time. Some people did not pay their money on time. And you're looking at saying, okay, what information did we have at the time we gave them the loan? And could we have used that to infer which of those were more likely to be good than bad? So it is a game of probability. What you're saying is, okay, if let's say people who are more educated or people who had, let's say, already a banking relationship with my company have a lower chance of defaulting, then I use that into a mathematical model that gives me, here's the probability, here's the chances that this person will default in the next 18 months given what I know of him at this time, and therefore lend to these people who are better in terms of their payment profile as predicted compared to the ones who are not.
But sorry to interject, but things like the imponderables, like how would you predict how my salary, if I'm will go up or come down, if I may lose my job? I'm a very successful businessman today, I may go bust tomorrow. And if I'm in the microfinance space, somebody will tell you the poorer you are, actually your default rates go down, and that's why microfinance models work. And we've seen bankruptcies of billion-dollar companies of billionaires, they, going belly up. So how does past data help you to do or evaluate, assess someone for the future?
So inherently, future is not predictable fully. A lot will happen that you don't know, and bad things can happen. A recession come and everybody will be affected. So these things you can't incorporate everything because there's no perfect information. Correct. The question is, can you be better than the human judgment? You're not seeking perfection. You're very far from perfection. But what you want to do is to be significantly better than human judgment. Right. So with the human judgment, let's say I have 10% default rate. For the same number of approvals, can I bring the default from 10 to 6 or 5? You're not going to 0, in which case you're perfect. Right. You're going from 10 to 7 or 6 or something like that. And that is really where the science, that is the extent to which the science works at that time. If you had more information, if you had a better crystal ball, you'll be even better. But this is not a job of predicting the future as much as improving the odds of getting it right. Slightly better. And that is very profitable. If you can bring your default rate from 10% to 5%, you have a functioning lending business. At 10%, you have a dud business. So it's a big difference between 10 and 5.
Since you worked in this industry, let me tell you one thing that somebody as recently as last month told me. That, I just bought a new car, financed it, but the financing company guys who look at your CIBIL score said, if you, go and check your CIBIL score very frequently, the score will come down. Isn't that very unfair? I mean, how does frequency affect my credit rating?
Firstly, the models when we built for ICICI, CIBIL wasn't there.
Right.
And this was pre-CIBIL days. And in fact, I saw the arrival of CIBIL and it made a big difference to the country. Right. Now, as far as checking CIBIL score is concerned, it has no effect on your score. So that is whoever told you did not communicate correctly. Here's what happens. If you just inquire your score, there's no effect on your rating. But if lenders are checking on your score, it means that you are applying for loans for multiple places. So what it is demonstrating is that you are seeking a lot of credit and you're applying to one bank and the next bank and the third bank, and all of them are pushing this inquiry at CIBIL. So if many inquiries are there to get your report, it shows that you are in need for credit, which means that your score should come down.
But we always shop for the best deal. I mean, as Indians, that's what we are known for. That, we will, now you have websites who will help you, where you get the best deal. But, and they're successful listed companies as well. But you're saying that, that in effect will, if you do that, it will adversely impact your score.
Yeah, how it works is, this is also solved for. Okay. How it works is that if in a window of time, let's say you did 10 queries because you were just planning to get this home loan and you want to get 10 different lenders to find that home loan. In a narrow space of time, if you got 10 inquiries, it will only count as one from the way the model looks at it. But let's say 6 months later, you came with another loan for another purpose. Then it becomes, it hits your score harder. So these things are all adjusted because you know what? After analyzing years and years of data, people know exactly the dynamics and these are incorporated into the odds and probabilities. That's the beauty of this field, is that it's completely data driven. There is no space for human judgment. If the data doesn't say that more inquiries lead to more losses, then your score won't come down.
Okay, that's very, very interesting and enlightening, of course. But this model, predictive behavioral models, they can be replicated in other industries. Have you done that at Fractal?
Exactly. It can be done for literally any sphere of activity in the world. The question always is it perfect? It's never perfect. Is it always better than human judgment? In almost every case, I can say that it can add to human judgment. And most often, if you take human intuition plus data-driven predictive models, you can get an amazingly better overall outcome. You can improve the odds of success, and improving the odds of success and getting this prediction right has huge meaningful business consequences for you. You can increase your profitability, increase your revenues, decrease your costs. So it is hugely beneficial for companies to use the science of predictive analytics in order to make decisions, whether it's supply chain decisions, it's customer decisions, it is marketing decisions, it's risk decisions. All of these decisions are in the purview of predictive analytics.
And you started off with obviously financial services because you were a banker yourself. What came next? Which are the next user cases or segments that you broke into and as you expanded?
Very first thing was predicting credit defaults, and we did it across a whole range of banks. We built almost the entire set of risk models initially with HDFC Bank, and it was very heartening to see HDFC Bank perform so well during the 2008 recession, thanks to some extent because of the models we had built with them. After that, we built it around marketing again for financial services, around customers who will respond to a campaign, who will take a credit card, who will take a overdraft on a loan, or who's going to take a let's say an increased credit limit on their credit cards. These things also are marketing use cases for in banks. Right at the same time, we also started working with consumer goods companies, and that's been one of the most interesting sectors for us as well, where we would try to understand consumer behavior with data. So in 2001, we were working with Unilever, and Unilever had this thing called wrapper audit. This was called repeat buyer survey. So they would go and have these special dustbins in various households, 30,000 households, where these households had agreed that after they open up any wrapper, any product, they would put the wrappers in that trash can. Okay. And the researchers would come in and pick up the trash can, and they would know exactly what you used, whether you had consumed chocolate or whether you bought Liril or Wheel or whatever. They would know what products you have bought and what products you have used. And with that information, you could figure out what are they buying and how often are they consuming. And we could see the changes in behavior as macroeconomic conditions changed and across customers and consumers. So for example, during the 2001 recession period, we saw that people dramatically decreased the frequency of consumption. So think of Starbucks. Having Starbucks every day versus having Starbucks every week or every month, you would change depending on the macroeconomic conditions, because you don't want affordability becomes an issue. Yeah. The second you would do is you'd become more sensitive to promotions. Buy one, get one free. These things attract you more because you're looking for more value. And then third thing that happens is that you downgrade the quality of products also. Sometimes you say, hey, I don't need to buy the most expensive version. Let me buy this cheaper brand. So there's also a brand preference down. You downgrade the quality of product. All these three things we could literally see in the data, and we could see that, from mathematics to psychology through data, right?
But you would, for a model or a project to work, you would have to map a household's consumption for months and to actually form a trend, isn't it?
Sometimes 18 months, sometimes 24 months. I mean, as long as possible. The wisdom here is that if it's too far back, it may not be relevant. If it's too recent, you don't have all the information. So it's always a golden window which...
What is the sweet spot?
Typically, in many of the credit models, etc., we would take 6 months of behavior and then predict for 18, 24 months. In some other cases, we would look at 1 to 2 years of behavior and then predict for the next year or 2 years. That's really the sweet spot.
So, financial services, consumer. In between, I think I was, fascinated when I got to know that my first actual interaction or, awareness vis-a-vis Fractal happened when I got to know that you were working with Mumbai Suburban rails and to bring down the accidental deaths that happen when people try to cross the tracks and get hit by a moving train. 75% of deaths actually came down after you guys came in and did that project. I mean, was it a one-of-a-kind project, or it's been, government has now also become a key client, or government departments has become a key client of Fractal as well after that experiment?
That was one of the marquee projects for Fractal. It was to work on trespassing around the train tracks in Mumbai. 10 people die every day crossing railway tracks in Mumbai. It is the largest cause of deaths, violent deaths in Mumbai, more than homicides and suicides combined.
Every day?
Every day, 10 people. It's remarkable. So what we did was to create a solution, a design solution, a behavioral sciences solution. Now it turns out that if you put bigger signboards saying, hey, this is dangerous, don't walk, etc., none of these things work. People have tried penalties, they've tried information, they've tried campaigns. It doesn't work. People are overconfident. Apparently, it turns out that if you go through the evolutionary psychology, we have never actually seen big, large objects move very fast. So when you see a train coming from a distance moving very fast, you cannot estimate how quickly it will come and hit you. So people feel like they can cross the track comfortably, and then it turns out that they were wrong, and in the process they die. So what we had to do was to help them understand how fast it's coming in a different way. So what we create is these yellow lines on the tracks. And as the train comes, the yellow lines are disappearing under the train. And that is a visual reference. Oh my God, it's disappearing so quickly. And that's how you figure out that hey, something is going on. And then there's a micro response to not cross the track, and then you save yourself. With that, along with that, we had a different horn system that we created for Indian Railways. Some visuals which were more visceral rather than any words on it. It was just a picture of a human being hit by a train. Like you see that, and it creates a fear response, which also stops you from crossing the tracks. So we created a system of solutions which dramatically brought down the deaths in Mumbai.
Like when the train would approach, those visuals would come out, or
no,
they were there
always
on the station?
They'll be on the station.
Okay.
We will place them strategically at places where people used to cross the tracks, and they would see that, and then they quickly, brain tells you to hold back, and then that is enough. That helps you in navigating the situation. Now we've done similar things now for the highways of India. So about 1,500 kilometers of national highways in India, we have brought down the accidental deaths by 50%. Now what happens is that India tracks these spots on the national highways. They're called black spots. Any black spot is a place where more than 10 people have died in the previous year because of accidents. There are about 9,000 black spots in India or something like that, which means that these are highly dangerous. If people do not slow down in those places, they have a real chance of having a fatal car accident. And then you also have near accidents and upcoming black spots. People haven't died enough, not enough people have died in that spot, but we know that near misses have taken place, mild crashes have taken place, and so on. So what we did was to make sure that there are ways to slow people down around these areas. Now again, you can put various kinds of boards saying, hey, this is an accident prone zone area, drive slow. Nobody looks at it, nobody's paying attention.
Don't talk while driving on a mobile.
It doesn't work. So what we did is to create design solutions where your human brain, subconscious, non-conscious part of your brain is working at you to stop, to slow down. So one of those solutions is these white zebra lines that we have created on the road tracks. So when it works like this. The gap between the white lines is large to begin with, and as you progress through that intersection area, it keeps shrinking. So the feeling you get is that the white lines are disappearing under my car faster. So you feel like your car is accelerating when it's not accelerating. Let's say you're driving at constant speed, your feeling is that it's accelerating, it's running out of control. So immediately press the brake. Because you press the brake, you slow down. In the process, you avoid accidents. That is a solution. There are other elements of the solution. The key idea is to not work with the conscious part of your brain, but work with the subconscious, non-conscious part of your brain and create that response of slowing down.
How much of this is maths, data, and how much of it is design intervention?
There is some math and science in the way, for example, we monitor camera feeds and diagnose which are the upcoming black spots and which are the near misses, etc. So some computer vision work happening behind the scenes. The solution is completely a design solution, behavioral sciences solution. So we do research these spots. We have a concept called Ethno Lab, which looks at how people make decisions in hot state. And using those techniques, we are able to figure out these are the underlying causes, and then we build a non-conscious solution to address those causes. So there is some hit and miss. It's not that every solution of Fractal will work. There is some trial and error in that situation, but we have seen some amazing solutions led by behavioral sciences. And then firstly, derived from some of the data science and AI around it.
Correct. You said that 10 people die every day.
Every year.
No,
in
10
Mumbai, yeah.
in Mumbai because of the trying to cross the railway tracks. Post the Fractal intervention, uh, has the number come down and it's still at that level, or it's again going up? How in the long term, how has it fared?
I wish I could give you some good news. The reality is that we showed amazing success in doing for a few stations, and it's very cheap solution because all you have to do is to paint. We could.
Yeah.
It is a completely free solution, by the way. We told the government that we would not charge them anything for implementing it, but getting it implemented is still hard in the context of India. So wherever it was implemented, big differences came up, but it hasn't been nationally rolled out. Now it's been many years, and every few months, couple of years, we meet various ministry officials and railway ministers and so on, and we mention that it's a low-hanging fruit. You can literally save thousands of people's lives by creating the solution. And there's everyone like, oh, why aren't we doing this anymore? And there's a renewed interest, but we haven't been able to get its solution implemented across the country.
And it not only, do you think that not only would it help people trying to cross over, there could be design or data interventions that can be done to help drivers, because a lot of accidents happen because of human errors. Can you help there as well?
Absolutely. One of them is paying attention. In the national highway solution, what we do is, instead of telling people that, hey, you may be falling asleep and therefore may be prone to an accident, we show them a picture of a hot cup of tea, chai, Indian chai, with that fumes coming out of it, right? The smoke coming out of that chai. And it instantly gives you a signal that, hey, maybe I should just find a coffee shop next door. If there was a board saying, hey, if you're sleepy, find a tea stall, it doesn't work. But you show the picture of a cup of tea or a glass of tea with the smoke coming out of it, it sort of gets people to get off the highway and get a cup of tea, which also saves their lives. So yes, we can absolutely work on the drivers and the psyche, and again, always address the non-conscious rather than the conscious.
So right now, among all the segments, which is the biggest segments when it comes to its contribution to Fractal's revenue? Is it still financial services, or is it consumer? Which is the biggest bucket?
Consumer goods is our biggest industry. Roughly, consumer goods and retail is about 40% of what Fractal does. Wow. Almost every major consumer goods company on the planet works with Fractal. So that has been a great area. We equally have very good penetration across technology industry, financial services, insurance, healthcare. Those are also interesting industries. The way Fractal approaches them is, we look for big companies, 10 billion in revenue at least, and therefore we work with a very select set of clients and solve very big problems for them.
And between you and your co-founder Pranay, how do you divide responsibilities? Is it like sectorally, or like we've seen in many other companies, that one person is the geek, is the tech guru, the other is the business facing guy? In Fractal's case, in your case, how does it work?
It's a great question. Pranay and I are very complementary. The way we divide our work is, Pranay focuses on getting things done today. He is very much an amazing taskmaster in getting things done and delivering the business performance that we need to deliver. I'm always thinking of the future. I'm always focused on tomorrow and the day after. Pranay is focused more on today. That's really how we divide. So anything to do with R&D, I'm very interested and very invested. Building products, I'm very interested. Building client relationships, I'm very interested. Building people relationship and building the culture, again, which is a long-term thing, I'm very interested. Those are my interest areas. So I get to do the stuff that I'm most interested in. Pranay gets to do the stuff that he's most interested in, and we have a fantastic, trusted relationship over 26 odd years.
So the tech side of things are your baby.
I love the tech, absolutely.
But interestingly, you also like to meet clients, and
I love
so
client
you do
relationship.
both.
I do both. Pranay absolutely manages the entire P&L, so to speak. Okay. And so if it's about making sure that we're executing perfectly and even maintaining client relationship, Pranay is fully involved. It's like an overlap area. But I have some great client relationships and a great relationship of trust. So I do show up in those situations in helping Fractal succeed and making sure the clients are well advised on how they're getting their AI journey implemented inside the organization.
Maybe that's the banker in you, which is still lurking somewhere behind, in your psyche. But cut to 2024, you've crossed 10,000 crores in revenue, cumulative revenues since inception. That's around $1.25 billion. You're also the first homegrown AI unicorn. The three key lessons that you've learned along the way.
AI lessons or entrepreneurship lessons?
Both.
Let me give you entrepreneurship lessons that I have learned, which I think every entrepreneur should think of. Number one is, just because you're good at something doesn't make you great at running that business. It's very important. I think I would have saved a few years of my life if I knew that. Being good at AI doesn't mean that you're a great AI entrepreneur, because being an entrepreneur means you have to run a business. You need to, there are lots of bells. It's like a great chef or a cook saying, I'll run a restaurant. Most of the time, he or she is spending time in other things rather than being the chef that she or he really wanted to do. So that is one thing I would always tell every entrepreneur is, you have to be interested in the business of AI, not interested in AI. And they're two different things. That's one. Second is, it's always a battle of survival and resilience. Bad things will always happen. They will happen unpredictably and maybe somewhat predictably. And you have to recover from those and get better. So, two things in that. One is taking feedback continuously and having this orientation towards improvement, self-improvement. And second is never taking an existential risk. Like Nassim Taleb talks about black swans, right? Never take a risk that could potentially wipe you out of the map, because entrepreneurship is a battle of survival and resilience. So the odds that you should not take is the odds of going away completely. For example, Byju's, I think it has taken such odds where it may not exist tomorrow because of the kinds of risks that they've taken. So I would advise companies or entrepreneurs from not taking existential risks.
But in a tech sphere, isn't that inevitable? Because technology of today can make you obsolete tomorrow.
Yes, you have to continuously make yourself obsolete. For example, do not take too much debt in order to go and buy companies, because that acquisition goes for a toss and you're out of business. That could be a kind of a risk that you could take. Don't take a regulatory risk. So you did something like Theranos did, right? They took some risks and now the company doesn't exist. So do not take risks don't bet the company on everything. You have to take big risks for sure, but you have to build it in such a way that even if that risk fails, you are not out of business. And that's really the idea of, that's the second thing: survival, taking feedback, not taking existential risks. And three is talent and culture, right? You build, everything is about convincing everyone else to be part of this. So how do you build a culture for the long term? How do you bring great talent is vital to the survival of the company for the long term. Do not ever think of it, you have to win the short term and the long term. And long term is eventually a series of short term measures. So if you say, look, I'm very busy right now, let me focus on this quarter, let me focus on for today, it ends up being that you're not building anything valuable in the long term. So you have to balance this, as some of the McKinsey guys say, telescopic and microscopic lens. You need both these lenses to be successful as an entrepreneur.
But for a company like Fractal, over the last 25 years, you've acquired, bought and sold almost close to a dozen companies, 10 or 11 companies. So that means incorporating 10 or 11 different cultures and imbibing them, taking some good points, leaving the other, and making that team assimilate. How do you do that?
First thing is, be very selective about acquisitions. Acquisitions have a very high rate of failure. Having done 10, if I look back, how many of them would I do it with the benefit of hindsight? Not many. Not many of those. Maybe 3 or 4.
Really? Wow.
So there is a high failure rate of acquisition. They say 70 to 90% acquisitions fail, or don't add shareholder value. So be selective about who you acquire. Um, Next is, once you have made that choice, those entrepreneurs who you are betting on, make them integral to your business. Retaining those entrepreneurs and getting the best out of them is important. When you buy stuff for their IP and not for their people and their entrepreneurs, then you are getting a very small part of the overall puzzle, and that is not going to help you. In very rare cases can a piece of IP transform your business. Most often the talent is very important. So how do you retain that entrepreneur is very important. How do you place them? And we are very fortunate that many of the entrepreneurs who uh, joined Fractal's journey are still entrepreneurial and running Fractal, and I'm very blessed because entrepreneurs are extremely hungry people. They have over years, and your ego is cut, chiseled out, and you are now you still have the hunger. So entrepreneurs are amazing in terms of building the business for the long term. If you can retain them and if you can inspire
How do you
them.
keep motivating them? Is it the wealth, multiplier that keeps them hooked, or something else?
Wealth is a small part of this. They generate some wealth as part of an acquisition. But what they're looking for is great success. Entrepreneurs are there for big success. Let's say they haven't hit a big league in the previous business, right? They haven't hit the multi-billion dollar. I mean, any company that we are acquiring, by definition, hasn't hit that multi-billion dollar kind of exit point. So they're looking for, I want to succeed at a bigger level. So if you create conditions for big success, I think it's very motivating. They're very driven automatically. You just have to get out of the way and give them bigger and bigger challenges, and I think that really
But then
inspires them.
when they come into your fold, there's a success. It becomes fractal success, and not that, let's call that company X which you acquired. Nobody will say, X has come up with great product. It's a fractal product. Then inevitably it's Srikanth and his co-founder who gets the credit.
That's a great point. When we think of Fractal's history, we go back and merge all the histories of the companies that have been part of Fractal. That is the only way to think about it. For example, I told you about the success of our work with railways, and that is actually Final Mile, a company that we acquired. I own that success as part of Fractal and Final Mile. And when Biju, who's the founder of Final Mile, talks about the work, he talks about it from that lens as well. So there's pride in the work that we've done together. And we want the entrepreneurs to subscribe to the greater mission. Are we building something bigger and better together? Are we better off together than alone, is the question. And this has to be answered every now and then. And we have to make sure that there's greater and greater challenges for the entrepreneurs who have subscribed to the Fractal journey.
Now, interestingly, you admitted, and I have to say, not many entrepreneurs do that. That 3 out of 10 acquisitions that you've done, you probably would do with the benefit of hindsight, and leave the 7. Uh, how do you now look at a potential target? How has the lens changed for you?
I'm more prone to say no now than before. I think earlier I was keen to say yes,
Because you were chasing growth?
because let's say being naive and feeling that, looking at the positive scenarios and seeing all the good that can come out of it, rather than looking at also understanding what bad can come out of it. So having this very optimism bias, so to speak. Now I'm no longer that guy. I'm going to look at it and say that, look, all of these things will happen. There's so much that'll, if you bought 100, you're actually getting maybe 60 or 50, because some things will get lost. But even this 50, is it worth doing it? Because it dramatically accelerates what you are doing. It brings value to the clients. It helps you conquer the world and build better stuff with AI. Are you getting amazing talent? So we have to see that it has to be much more valuable in multiple ways. If you triangulate it in multiple ways, it has to feel like it's a slam dunk in terms of why we should do this deal. And only then it will be a good deal. It should feel like a slam dunk, and that will be somewhat okay. If it's somewhat okay, it will be a terrible deal at the end of it. So we have to be a little bit more cautious in terms of what we do. It's not just about speed. Speed is good, but acquisitions are expensive.
Speed kills, to use the highway analogy. Uh, the last round of valuation, 1.5 billion. You've raised a lot of venture funding, your marquee investors, TPG, Apex. Uh, you're planning an IPO. Now, in your business, there's a lot of science, a lot of maths, there's a lot of, as you said, the human mind. It's almost like creating a vaccine. There's a lot of R&D involved. It's almost like, searching for oil or energy sources. Uh, why list? Why not stay private? Because once you list, everything, there's no scope of a mistake. You will be on a treadmill. Quarter on quarter, investors will say, show me growth. More importantly, show me profitable growth.
And that is one of the reasons why we have stayed private for this long, because we wanted to make sure that we have the license to experiment, build this business for the long term. Now the question is, yes, we have to build it for the long term. We need permanent capital for it, right? We need investors who are here for the very, very long term. With private investors, I mean, we have amazing private investor relationships, and we've created incredible returns for them, and it's something I believe in. Having said that, private investors always have a horizon, 4 years, 6 years, and which means that every 4 or 6 years we are looking for a way to have them exit the business, which can create its own distortions. As opposed to that, I think we have to give credit to public shareholders that they can see the long term even better than the
Can they?
Yes.
I thought they are far more fickle.
They are fickle if you disappoint them continuously, but they're also able to see big trends. They're able to give 100 p or 200 p or even make
But
loss.
what's happening now is bonkers. Let's not talk about that. But I'm saying that I'm like the flip side of it. If once things normalize, and it is bound to normalize, this 100p will come down to a more rational 20, 30p. Some of the companies in India trade, they are more valuable than Apple, than Tesla. I don't know how, but that's seems to be the new reality. But when actual reality sinks in, that's when the pressures come in. That's when the entrepreneurial instincts can get curbed, because you have to satisfy a larger set of stakeholders.
See, there is this concept of wisdom of the crowds.
Yeah.
If you have many independent thinkers coming together, you actually get a better sense of the value of the stock than otherwise. In private, it's a negotiated deal. Yes, private investors are very sophisticated, but they're also extract their leverage in terms of negotiate their way into the relationship. Whereas if you have individual shareholders, smart individual shareholders, you get a better sense of the price. And one of the quotes that I like most about this is that in the short term, stock markets are like voting machines. In the long term, stock markets are like weighing machines. So you have to play the longer term game with the stock markets. Sometimes there'll be ups and downs, crazy valuations. I think in general, public shareholders are able to understand why something is exciting, and there is a buyers and sellers. It's not a perfect market, but it's nearly perfect market. So there are distortions, but eventually in the longer term, they are more smarter indicators of the value of a company than private markets are.
Interesting. And you're doing, or you're thinking of the IPO, or you're going ahead with the IPO largely to give exit to your investors, or you need money to also grow the business?
We're not yet going public, and I'm not allowed to talk about that topic. What I would say is that one of the interesting things about being public is also this ability to really experiment for the long term, right? Your ability to actually do research can actually go up. Think of biotech companies that are public. No private shareholder has the capacity to take that kind of a risk, but public shareholders are willing to take that kind of risk because they know that there is a small odds of a very big outcome. So eventually the public markets are also the markets that will give you the permission to really think out of the box and think the very, very big term. So you can see private markets will let you aspire a little bit more than where you are right now. The public markets are going to say, like, look, you are here, you can get to the moon, and I'm willing to back you. And that's the advantage of the public markets as well.
You certainly you are an optimist, and it feels like that the IPO is sooner than later. But we're going to move to another topic and just want to understand, you know, your FY24 revenues were around $300 million, if I'm not mistaken. Um are you profitable yet?
We are profitable. We have, for the first 2 years of Fractal, we were not profitable when we started. But since year 3, we have always been profitable. For the first 13 years, we didn't raise any institutional round
Correct.
of money. So we had to make the cash flow. Not only were we profitable, we are cash flow positive
Wow.
throughout the journey. Now, recently we've incubated a bunch of companies which have all raised their own capital. Cure.ai has been a great success doing healthcare AI and so on. So these companies now, they're doing extremely well. They've raised a ton of capital. They're doing game-changing work, but they are loss-making, and those losses we do have to put into our P&L. And then we have stock-based, some ESOP-related charges, etc. So sometimes when you see a loss, it's actually not. We have very high gross margins. We have very good adjusted EBITDA margins, but the P&L definition of loss, we may sometimes, a couple of years in the past, we may not have profits to reported profits, but that is not an indication of the quality of the business.
So right now, FY24, the FY25, which is already which have already begun, you will be you will remain profitable.
Profitable and significantly cash generating.
Interesting. You said that you have started incubating several companies. I think one of them is Kaleido.ai, and the world probably got to know more about it this Holi when all of you wished your friends and family with a video which had a series of pictures, Einstein and robots, astronauts in space, tiger and a bird in holy colors. What does Kaleido.ai do? Explain in simple terms. The images were fantastic.
Kaleido is a foundation model built grounds up. It's called a diffusion model. The idea is to take a text-based prompt. You say, hey, I want this, and understand it enough and create a picture from scratch. It creates a picture from white noise. It starts with a white noise picture, and it takes away the noise, eliminates the noise to create a picture. It's quite fascinating, these diffusion models, the way they work. It's another, like ChatGPT is a LLM, large language model. These are called diffusion models. There are two kinds of AI that are progressing really fast in the world of foundation models. So diffusion models takes a text-based prompt, they take noise and they eliminate noise to get a picture. And the way they do it is they look at many millions of pictures from the internet and other places and see the descriptions attached to the pictures, and they're able to reverse engineer from descriptions to pictures. From pictures to descriptions, you had previous AI used to take a picture and describe it. Now you have AI which take a description and create a picture. Now we created this India's first text to image model as Kaleido and released it. It works in 17 Indian languages and it's free for everyone to use. No plans to charge anyone for it, and it's really got a lot of traction. It's one of our R&D products. We've created a couple of R&D products in the last 6 months, and the idea is that we want world at large to experience AI in a very visceral way, because we can tell all the great work that we do with Fortune 500 companies, but most of us
can't relate to it.
Can't relate with it. How do I reduce supply chain inefficiencies which created, let's say, $1 billion of profitability for someone? You can imagine it, but you can't relate with it. So this one you can all touch and feel. AI has become so powerful that we want people to experience AI and say, oh, this is amazing. And that's why we did Kaleido. We also did MarshallGoldsmith.ai, which is a Marshall Goldsmith is an executive coach. It's his avatar, free for everyone. You can ask any questions, get amazing life advice from him. And 3, we did something called as Vaidya.ai last week, which is India's first healthcare AI, which answers questions to every consumer, every patient, in order to prepare them better for doctor visits, find out side effects, and just generally get some health information that could help them in making better choices every day.
Wow. No, I just want to go back to Kaleido and understand. So I will just tell, uh, I don't know how to say it. I tell the AI or tell the app, tell the software, I want a picture of a sunrise. Or do I have to be more specific? I need a picture of sunrise by the mountains or Himalayas and give those prompts. Or I can be as open ended as, a sunset, a sunrise.
You could start by as little as a sunrise or sunset, it will give you a pretty decent picture. The more specific you get, let's say you want a sunrise and two people are holding their hands with each other looking at the sunrise, that will become more specific. The more you give to it, the more it will try to follow your prompt and get you the best picture possible. It will not be perfect in the sense that if you write a whole paragraph and ask it for a picture, it may or may not produce. What we've also done is that most of us find it challenging to write the full prompt and imagine everything. So we have a feature called prompt enhance. So you can write a little prompt and click that prompt enhance button. It figures out and builds you a much larger, better prompt, which will give you even better picture automatically, and then generates those pictures as well. So you can use it any way you like in all these work.
Fascinating. But before you touched upon a very important point, which is the power of AI. Before we go there, I feel a lot of people just talk loosely about these things. GPT, AI, generative AI, LLMs. So I want to, undergo a basic tutorial with you. What is generative AI? If you can explain in absolute, watered down, simple way.
So AI has had two areas, two fields. One you could call as discriminative AI, and the new one is called generative AI. So let me back up and first describe what is AI. AI is, think of it as a series of instructions or a way of doing things that can match or exceed human performance on something. For example, you could say, we were discussing credit scoring, we were saying how to lend. If I could write a piece of software or a code or an algorithm, meaning let's think of it as a series of if then else statements, which says if this kind of person approve the loan or reject the loan, and it does better than any expert human being can do, I would call that AI. So AI is a broad area. Within that we have these things called machine learning, where machines are learning from examples. Like all of us learn with examples. For example, let's say you came into this world from ancient civilization and didn't know anything, and I told you this is a cup and this is also a cup and showed you two examples of cup. Then after some time you'll know what a cup is. Maybe with 2 or 3 examples you'll figure out, because now you're having a mental image for what a cup is, even if you didn't have one before. So how can a machine also learn with examples rather than we specifying that cup has to be this size and this shape? That's very hard. So that is about machine learning, machines learning with examples. Now generative AI is about generating new content with anything. You tell it something, it generates new content with it. Discriminative AI was about, let's say, figuring out who's going to default on a loan, the previous AI, right?
But in so Kaleido is a generative AI.
It's generative AI because it's generating a picture. If we want to write a poem with ChatGPT, it's generative AI. If it says, hey, I'm giving you a text, produce a video for me, it's generative AI. Now, any answer generation typically is generative AI, because you asked a question and you're generating a big answer for that by understanding the question and taking the knowledge of the world and answering the question. That is all in the realm of generative AI. And now these are called, this has all been built by what is called as GPTs, which is essentially generative pre-trained transformer. How these learn is, they look at a series of texts in the world, like books written and blogs being written, websites and everything else. They read that and keep predicting the next word. They'll say, they see, for example, a magazine like this, you see the first, it says AI trends to watch out, and then next 3 letters are for in 2024. Now it takes a few words, it tries to predict the next word, and when the next word turns out to be the same, great. If it doesn't turn out to be the same, it learns from this information, and by crawling through the entire world of information, somehow magically it has a knowledge of the world and it's able to answer questions. It's absolute magic, and we couldn't have believed that such a thing existed. Even 5 years ago it was well in the realm of magic, but now it's very real. We are all using it every day.
And what's language LLMs.
These large language models are these generative pre-trained transformers. That is the technology underlying large language models. Large language models are taking this language of the internet and the world and learning wisdom and model of the world through that process.
Now, it is certainly magical. It is certainly has a lot of wow factor, but it's also dangerous. I'm feeling scared if they can, if AI can paint, if AI can write poetry, tomorrow AI can also probably do what I do or do what my colleagues do their editing, do some, put music and all. Then are we looking at a world where we are jobless and it's the machines who rule the world?
For the most part, what it will do is it will make our lives much, much easier, much better and easier. It's like a tool. Like you have a smartphone, you've been holding a smartphone, and imagine if you had to do this without a smartphone a few years ago, it would have been much more challenging to have. You'll have pages of notes and you'll be shuffling through the pages, it'll be harder. So technology has made your life easier. So this is a new tech which should make the job of an editor or a photographer or any of these a lot easier. So it will augment us and improve our productivity. We'll get more done in less time. Two, we'll be more accurate in what we do because we have more intelligence coming in. And three, our usage of technology will become easier. So if right now you can talk to a machine and get it to do things which otherwise you would have had to type or you have to do something else. So usability goes up. So this is really how it will improve our lives. But in the process, what happens is that, let's say I need 100 people to do a certain piece of job. Now I am doing the job at 2x the speed. It means that I only need 50 people to do the job. So the other 50 people have to go find something else to do. And therefore, there will be job losses and economic consequences of productivity increase and intelligence explosion that is going to happen. And that is something that is one of the downsides of any technological progress, because it will eliminate some jobs. But the good news is that it will also create completely new things that we can't even imagine what it will be. Like all the software programmers, 100 years ago, there were no software programmers. 100 years ago, the whole world was, 97% of the world was agriculture. Right? 1850s, 97% of the world economy was agrarian. Now, 3% of the world is agrarian or something like that. So things have changed dramatically, and we are only better off for it.
But from chatbots like Eva, which you've only created, I have a different opinion on it. I just don't like it, but that's another conversation, and I'll tell you why. That Eva is a chatbot that you've done for HDFC Bank. You are now actually talking of AI agents, of creating AI agents who can replicate or that can replicate. This itself is, scary. Personalities and emotional aspects of human interactions by responding to questions and queries with personalized, literally bespoke responses. I mean, this is mind blowing, but also really scary. Then there's a serious chance that we'll become redundant faster than we know.
Just think about old people right now. Somebody who's in their 80s, late 70s, mid 80s. They're often quite alone, quite lonely. Many of their companions are not there and they're quite alone. And one of the challenges they have is they can't talk to anyone because no one has enough attention span and they don't have enough time because they're very busy with their own lives. Now imagine an AI companion who would be there to continuously talk to them and listen to them, fully listen to them and engage with them. Actually, it's not a bad thing. So we'll have AI which will not only detect our emotion but also respond to our emotion and create a sense of companionship. Now, yes, we know that it's not real. There's a machine at the end of it. It's not a human being at the end of it. But it's only a matter of time we will get used to dealing with this. For example, my daughter, who's just 12 years old, she's been having these conversations with GPT-4o. GPT-4o is the latest model of GPT, which has interactive voice conversational feature where you just put it on and then you can have a real human-like conversation with that machine. Now, as she was planning her next year of school was going to start, she was having a chat. Okay, I want to do this in my school year. Can you give me some ideas of some study ideas and Can you help me plan my timetables? And GPT-4o is actually having a pretty reasonable conversation at her level, helping her figure out all of those things. This is something that is quite, I think it's a good thing for humankind that machines are getting smarter and understanding us instead of we having to understand them. It is powerful. There are some negativities involved, and what if we fall in love with machines like the movie Her, etc. These are all beginning to happen, and there are some negative consequences. By and large, I think human beings will be better off. Just imagine at 3 a.m. somebody wants to harm themselves. This happens a lot, middle of the night. They can have a conversation with uh, AI agent, and in that process, get better. So whereas no human being can help them at that time. So I think
So the AI agent is not a human at the back end. It is a machine.
It's a complete machine. There's no human intervention whatsoever. It has enough knowledge, understanding. It understands language. It responds back in language.
But can it understand emotions?
It can understand. It can find out the emotional tonality of your voice and use of words. There are words have emotions automatically embedded. Soon they will also have video feeds also, by which they can even detect emotions in your faces. So there are all these kinds of AI which will be very human like in the way they will respond to us. Even if they are not humanoid, they can still respond. It could just be a machine, but it will respond to us like human beings, and we will feel like sharing more of our life with them, because at least there's someone who's listening, as opposed to other human beings who have their own priorities in life.
But you gave the example of your daughter. She's 12 years old. At 12, I was playing more football and doing less homework. I'm sure you were probably doing the same or playing cricket. Shouldn't she be doing that instead of being, looking at a screen all the time? Aren't we moving away from being a social animal and thereby impeding on our cognitive, our cognitive responses?
Absolutely amazing point here. This is one of the dangers that does exist. In her case, it was her summer vacation, and her friends had all gone away. So she was like, okay, I'm feeling somewhat
Bored.
alone and bored, and parents have gone to work, and what do I do? And then she is finding a companion at that point in time, right? So it is as soon as we have human connection, we probably won't need the machine at that point of time. But it becomes a substitute when human beings are not around. Yes, there is a whole area of getting addicted to digital devices and what it is doing to us, and it's a vastly important topic which we are not discussing right now. But I think in the context of AI, I think these AI agents will just be there when other human contact is not easy or challenging or not desirable.
But I feel that we are becoming far more insular, aloof. We don't go out, we cocoon ourselves, and that leads to physiological, mental ailments. And this whole genre of lifestyle diseases, sedentary lifestyle, technology plays a big role in that.
There is no substitute for in-person contact with friends and family members. There's no substitute for physical activity and exercise. And anyone who reduces those is going to have severe health consequences. We human beings are wired to connect with other human beings more than machines. And absolutely, yes, this is a big epidemic, but it's not caused by AI. It is actually caused more by social media and the rise of personal devices which are addictive, right? The content in these things is addictive. AI agents are not that addictive because they're interesting. You can talk to them, but really the really addictive content is the TikTok videos and the 10-second TikTok videos and the YouTube videos and the Facebook and Instagram feeds.
But aren't they all related to the same thread? The social media, digital, because algorithms are throwing these videos at you by knowing what you like. You may like music, so probably more music videos or clips will come up. I may like more film clips, that will come up. That's where the AI comes in. And let's take the case of a child or even an adult. Very soon we may be we may face a reality where instead of going out to play cricket, it'll be a simulated cricket ground, and you'll probably and you've already seen that in gaming. that, hand movement. And so, but that's not the real deal. I mean, we are increasingly moving away from being outdoor and doing things which used to come naturally to us.
I fully agree. AI can be used to weaponize social media.
Yeah.
And it is being used to weaponize social media. At the end of the day, AI is a tool. AI is a technology, it's a general purpose technology. Good actors can use it, but bad actors will use it even before the good actors. It is like any progress in science and technology, it has good and bad consequences. It is also dual use, which means it can have civilian and military
Yeah.
uses. So every such progress comes with its own share of risks, and here the risks are also very, very clear.
But I now feel that the commercial aspect of it, the stock market, valuations, they seem to be rewarding more the risk, or the, what are the new frontiers, and push the envelope rather than being ethical or responsible about it. Nobody wants to take responsibility. Everybody says it's a tool, it can happen, but you know what? मैं क्या करूं?
The markets really incentivize growth.
Yeah.
Growth at all costs. That's unfortunately or fortunately, that's the way the world currently works, is that it's all about growth. Even the prime ministers of countries or presidents of countries will get elected or defeated based on the growth they're delivering to the world. So growth is all important, and fundamentally you have to go back and look at whether it is the right metric. Is GDP growth the right metric, and is company growth the right metric only, or there are other growth metrics? That is something that is worth going and checking. And that is the trouble with the objective function. Now, coming to the part about responsible AI, now there are several frontiers of responsible AI, but the essential idea here is that think of it as a grandma test. Are you comfortable doing this? The ethics test you have to apply, right? Are you comfortable telling what you're doing with your grandma? Are you willing to do this to your, one of the banks I recently met said that they have a principle in their bank that if I can't sell a financial product to my family members, I should not sell it to anybody. And that's, so you have to use some ethical filters in the way you use AI as well. If we publish the algorithm by which publish the logic by which these videos are getting placed on your feed, and that is something that the social media companies can't claim to be theirs, and will be embarrassed by it, they should not use it. So there is a whole set of principles around responsible AI, and what Fractal does is that everything that Fractal releases has to go and get certified by a responsible AI system that we have created. It's a scorecard, and only if it passes the responsible AI scorecard, it gets released. As an example, we talked about Kaleido. Kaleido is a text to image model, and here we can actually generate celebrity images. You can say Rahul Gandhi and Prime Minister Modi having a cup of tea in front of India Gate, and you will get that image beautifully. But what it will also do is it will watermark that image so clearly that no one has any doubt that it is a AI generated image. It's not a real image. There are invisible and visible watermarks in that. So there are various. If you ask for some not so clean pictures, it will not generate them for you. So there are various kinds of safeguards put in place to make sure that the output of these models is safe for the world at large.
Again, I go back to the listing question. Let's assume you're listed, you are a big company, one of the top companies in India or in America approaches you, let's do business together, this is what I need, this is what you can do, you agree, but the company fails on the responsible or the good AI filter, the report card. Will you decline that opportunity?
Absolutely.
But your shareholders will kill you.
I don't think so. Shareholders, I think this is maybe the assumption here is that shareholders are not mature enough to understand what is good in the very long term, because this may be attractive in the short term but not necessarily good in the long term. And like I said, I never want to take existential risks on Fractal. If you do something evil, it has a existential risk on the company. So for example, we do not work with any tobacco companies. No matter what happens, we will not work with tobacco companies. Today we do work with companies that sell spirits, for example. But at some point of time, you may have to ask ourselves the question: what is ethical? What is moral? And is selling sugar water good or bad? You might say, hey, Coca-Cola is a perfectly ethical company and it's one of the most valuable brands in the world, but is it okay? Sometimes we have to make those choices. Sometimes it's driven by what the market, where the world is in terms of the ethical choices it's making. Cigarette companies were okay 100 years ago. Now they're not okay. And it may, some other companies may or may not be okay in 20, 30 years from now. As the world's perceptions of what is ethical changes, we have to also move and make sure that we only serve those companies and those users which are perfectly ethical at that point in time.
Interesting, because people talk about big finance, big pharma, and these are gray areas. What is, there's no black and white here.
Every big company is potentially subject to
correct.
such
So we will revisit this probably in future to see how you're coping. But the other worry is there's no traceability as AI evolve. Now, ChatGPT 4 going forward, then the onus is completely gone. Who is responsible for creating this image of Rahul Gandhi and Modi sitting? Or it can be far more insidious in a country which is very fragile. Societies around the world are very fragile. I saw a video in the US elections which said Kamala Harris and Donald Trump having a baby. Right, it's a deep fake, I know, but maybe in some parts of America or whatever, whether people will think it's real or not, it's that's besides the point. But can you trace it back? Probably sooner than later we won't be able to trace it back to who did it. Isn't that problematic?
The industry is coming together in creating some safeguards and creating a way to technologically trace back every deepfake video into that it is a deepfake. This is still ongoing. But publish any of these software providers who are creating text to image, text to video, and other kinds of generative AI products, they are putting those watermarks so that it can be traced back and it can be detected by other algorithms that are trying to figure out if it's real or fake. So there's an industry that's producing fake stuff in order to profit, in order to spread misinformation, and there's another industry that is trying to detect this fake. That's also driven by AI. Both are getting smarter, and if the publishers of these products and publishers of the softwares can agree on a standard by which they will watermark everything, then we may actually be better off than worse off. Think of spam, email spam as one of the areas. Over the years, email spam has multiplied millions of times, but our email spam has not increased substantially, because as spam creators have become better and better, spam filters have become even better than them, and therefore there has been an equilibrium maintained. So that will happen for deepfakes as well.
Here, I will use a quote, which I think you yourself wrote when we talked about, ethical AI or even AGI, I think.
I'm getting very worried here. Your research is spectacular.
No, but and you quoted someone, and I'll come to that, saying whoever becomes the leader in this sphere, which is AI, will become the ruler of the world. Said in 2017. This is Vladimir Putin. Someone, many would argue, is using this in the wrong way, as Russia and Ukraine is still engaged in a war which has millions of civilians have lost homes, they've lost their loved near and dear ones. It's as much cyber war, tech war, misinformation war as it is a physical, war. So, should governments come in and regulate? EU is thinking about it. Should the companies regulate themselves, or self-regulation is a no-no?
There's no problem with self-regulation. Self-regulation is absolutely required, but it's not enough. We need regulation at a higher levels, at the levels of government, etc. in a way that it doesn't stop progress from happening, but solves for some of the negative consequences of that. The Vladimir Putin quote that you alluded to is very important, because when that was made in 2017, governments around the world woke up. I remember in 2018, I was invited to be part of a national AI task force on defense that the government of India, under the defense minister, was created. We worked with the army chiefs and the navy chiefs and the air force chiefs and created a roadmap for India's defense, because AI was getting so good that we had these real consequences of autonomous weapons and so on. These risks haven't gone away. As AI is getting better and better, there's a real risk that all of the economic surplus of the world is captured by a few players who are becoming very good, and then a country can say, hey, you know what, I will make sure that this is not exported anywhere else. I will take all of that in myself, and therefore use that to now create cyber wars, physical wars with autonomous weapons, information wars, and so on. And also, by the way, get your attention and the war for attention. I will win all of that because I have the superpower of AGI. Like, you know that last year the US government banned the export of the H100 chips to China, now H200 and so on. By this way, US has a few years lead time over China in terms of AI advancements. So this is what US did with China. But think, so that was hardware. But with AI and others, you can see that as AI gets to a place which is very close to AGI, many other things may start to happen. And therefore, I believe that countries have to also create their own capabilities in order to be relevant in a AI AGI world. The examples for me are what we did in the for nuclear technology. India created BARC in the 1950s and 60s. We created ISRO in the 1950s and 60s, which has really helped India remain at the cutting edge of nuclear and space technology. I think AI merits a similar kind of attention from India and other governments too. India has the population strength, we have the overall scale, we have the wherewithal to do it, and we must do in order to protect our self-interest.
Shouldn't Vikasit Bharat then have AI ministry?
100%. I believe that we need to have a department of AI which creates an ISRO equivalent in the world of AI, and it is something that the government should have done in 2020, but the second best time to do it is now.
Yeah. And a regulator, an independent regulator to monitor corporations, is that imperative?
Yes, that overall set of responsible AI guidelines would be very helpful. It has to be done in a way that it's very tricky to play that balance, because any regulator who comes and does an overreach is going to constrain the companies that are operating within the regulatory paradigm, and therefore create a comparative disadvantage compared to other regimes where these restrictions may not be there. So if EU comes and becomes very strong, then EU's innovation goes down and US will gain a march over EU. So we have to be careful as to how to set it up in a way that we prevent bad consequences from happening, but we don't reduce the ease of doing business and make ourselves uncompetitive in the process. So this delicate balancing game has to be done by the governments around the world, including the government of India.
What next? You've had, if I can reveal to our audience, 25-year-old Fractal helmed by a 50-year-old. What does the next 25 years hold for Fractal as well as the universe that you thrive on?
In the next 5 to 10 years, we will have such powerful AI that the world will be incredibly different from where it is today, both from the way guaranteeing some outcomes like GDP growth and social outcomes to all individuals, etc. AI will be very important part of that equation. Therefore, I'm very excited to be in the industry of AI and work with the biggest companies in the world in helping them create AI advantage. I think we continue to be building the company for the next 100 years. So 25 years is a quarter of the journey for the next 100 years. I don't expect to be running the shop 25 years from now, but I would be very disappointed if we did not create an institution that is self-sustaining and has amazing leaders who are taking it to a whole new level that I couldn't have even imagined at this point in time.
And you would judge that with market cap, bottom line, or some other innovation?
So we look at the value delivered to client. We have a definition that every client that we serve should get at least $1 billion of value, 1 billion at least. That will probably go up as we become bigger. We look at whether people are happy. Is it a great place to work? We look at, are we creating superb innovation, and are we changing the world and creating meaningful impact? The one way I look at it is that if Fractal were to disappear from the face of this world, will the world be significantly worse off? If the answer is not no, if the answer has to be yes, it will be worse off. If it's not yes, then we got to do more innovative stuff. We have to take even bolder steps.
I hope the regulator does the same, because the problem, as always, is technology and innovation moves faster than regulation. And in a space like AI, where things are evolving before we can finish saying artificial intelligence, regulation always is difficult and plays catch up. And that to me is the key challenge. Srikanth, it's always a pleasure to have a conversation. We can go on and on and on, probably, do 10 episodes. And, we certainly will come back and do more. I've seen Fractal evolve over the years, and it's been a fascinating journey. Thank you so very much for taking time out and talking to the Morning Brief.
Thank you, Arijit. Wonderful to have this conversation with you.